YourTown television program. I'm your host for this Naval Postgraduate School Foundation sponsored segment, Jeff Kline. And today we have the Chief Executive Officer of the NPS Foundation, Richard Patterson. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate being here.
Now, we were glad we just captured you recently, but you bring a fresh new perspective to our foundation. We'd like to address some of that. We'd like to learn a little bit more about you first in the show, if that's okay.
Certainly.
Now, you took the position here from Santa Catalina, is that right? And what did you do for that position, school advancement?
I was over at Santa Catalina for 10 years and was connected to the school first because our two daughters went to school there.
Oh,
and so
perfect.
that's how I was introduced to it and started volunteering as most parents do in different ways and ended up serving in some larger volunteer roles there, eventually as a trustee for a couple years. And then got to know some of the board members and the head of school, and it just was one of those moments of fate where I was looking to do a little something different, and they had an opportunity there. So I embraced it and was over at the school for 10 years working as their assistant head of school for advancement.
Fantastic. Now, was this after your daughters had already graduated, or did they live with the fact that their dad was on campus at the same time they
No,
were?
I was in the midst of it. It was in the midst of it, and I before I gave the final yes, and they gave me an offer. I asked both the girls if they'd be okay with it, and they were at an age where they were enthusiastic about it. If it had been a couple years later,
it may have been
might have been a
different.
little sketchy, yes.
Now, before that, you were at Community Affairs Advancement at Pebble Beach. And tell us a little bit about that job.
Sure. I moved down here in 1991 and started to work for Pebble Beach Resorts at that time. I worked in the golf division for about a year and a half.
Okay.
And then had an opportunity to go up and work in their community affairs office and work with some great people up there, Mark Stillwell, Mark Verbanich, and really was a liaison out in the community in many ways. Worked with local business organizations, nonprofits, worked with some projects that the real estate division was involved with. So had a number of different connections around the community, and that's really why I first got to know the wider Monterey Peninsula and enjoyed that very much. And then about 6 years into that, I was offered a chance to go back in the golf division and work as tournament director and also managing some corporate sponsorship affiliated with those tournaments. So I jumped at that opportunity. Pebble Beach is obviously known for golf and really was involved in some wonderful things there. Many of the tournaments, as you know, have charitable components to them.
Right.
And so it was a great spot to be for 16 and a half years.
Well, now, was that your first interface with the NPS Foundation? As we'll talk about later, there is a charitable golf tournament that occurs.
Sure.
Was that the first exposure you had to the foundation?
Well, it was the first exposure when I was in community affairs, and it was really through Admiral Moz. I met Admiral Moz, and we got to know each other a little bit, and actually helped him host a couple people out at Pebble Beach who were visitors at NPS and such, and so that's how I first got to know the school, and then following just the local newspapers and different happenings and events there, yes.
Now, you say you moved down from somewhere into Pebble Beach. Where are you from originally?
I grew up in Livermore. My dad worked at the Lawrence Livermore Lab for almost 30 years, and we moved to I was born in Livermore, but the family moved there when the town was quite small, and about 4,000 people, and probably a couple thousand of them worked at the lab at that time.
It's changed quite a bit now with the highway and driving.
Yes,
well, we were
absolutely.
fortunate to have you move down there.
Well, it's been a blessing for our family. It's a wonderful place in so many ways, and great place to raise children, and we're very grateful we landed here. I met my wife here, and so it couldn't have worked out better.
Well, it's interesting because you you have captured the experience of exactly what a good CEO of the NPS Foundation is. You've had community affairs and outreach at Pebble Beach. You've got a sense of the education mission from Santa Catalina. So I think we were fortunate to actually capture you in this position. But let's turn to the foundation now and give us a short explanation of what that is. I mean, why would a government school need a foundation?
That's a good question, and it's one of the first questions I heard when I started talking to some of the board members about the position, and they put it forth as one of the challenges of the job. I did a lot of fundraising at Santa Catalina School, and we were able to do some great things there and hope to do the same thing at the foundation. But I think the the simplest explanation to me is that while the school functions largely on government funding from different entities, there's always room, particularly at a place like this that it gets involved in such complex research and important research, to develop a source of funding that can further that. And I think the term that is most used around the foundation is we help to provide a margin of excellence for the school. We're able to bring in funds that help to support research that maybe the Department of the Navy, the Department of Defense isn't quite ready to jump onto yet. But with a little seed funding, it's really a venture capital sort of model. With some seed funding, the faculty and students can develop a proposal, can further develop an idea that then allows them to approach a larger entity, again, Department of the Navy, Department of Defense, for greater funding to really get into the research and do their work. So in some ways, we're kind of a entity that helps startups around the campus, if you want to look at them that way. But then we also go further, and we do funding beyond seed funding. We recently started calling it seedling funding.
Seedling funding.
Where we'll go a little bit further up the ladder in terms of dollars and help the projects move to another level. We don't take on all the seed funding projects we do in that way, but some of them. And again, that allows the ideas, the research to develop further. And hopefully in the end, if they need larger dollars, it puts them in a position to go out and talk to different entities that would be a more normal source of funding for such projects.
Well, this is an important service that the foundation provides the faculty. So I want to underscore a couple things. Sometimes our regular funders are Office of Naval Research or OPNAV, and when a faculty member, particularly talented in some either technology ways or concept ways, has an idea, they need to develop that. They need to have time to develop it in order to actually send it as a regular proposal. And I think what this excellent program does for the foundation, of course, is provide a small amount of funding in order to get that ideas. Can you bring up some examples that we've recently done at all?
Sure. There's a seed funding provided not too long ago to one of the faculty members who's developing, it's actually a facility, a concept for a facility on government land here in Monterey. And that funding has allowed the idea to kind of mature a little bit and get to a point where the questions that they have around the development for this facility have been better identified. And now that project is moving forward to a point where they'll start to look at some of the specifics in actually creating the facility. What are the costs associated with that? What are the opportunities for collaboration, both from government entities and possibly corporations? And the next funding that we're looking to provide in this case will take it to a level where they'll better understand what would be the universe of corporations that might want to be involved, what elements of the government or NPS might want to be involved in this, because it ultimately would be a very collaborative project and potentially a great example of a public-private partnership that could take place.
That's great. Well, in fact, that's just sort of research now that's required because of the complexity of the problems we face is both interdisciplinary and collaborative. And this is an important function of the foundation, but you also sponsor the bicycle team as well. So tell us a little bit about some of the other activities that you help for the students.
Sure. Well, interesting in that I've had a lot of conversations with board members, getting to know them, understanding their perspective on the foundation, the school. A number of them have connections to the school as students or otherwise. And in that process, people obviously have focused on our funding of research, and that's what we're really set up to do. We're there to promote and advance the mission of NPS. That's our primary function. But in all those conversations, everybody brings up the students. And although the students are very involved in the research and such, they want the student experience to be as rich as it can, rewarding as it can, whether it's social time with their families in the area, whether it's clubs associated with the school. So there's a great concern about that student experience while they're here. And I think that's important in so many ways. It creates a greater bond between the students and the school, students in the area. And so we have about 8 clubs now, and I think there might even be a 9th one coming online. Bike club, car club, running club. And the foundation provides funds to support those, whether it's helping to cover entry fees for races, whether it's helping to sponsor social events that they do. But in so many ways, when I first came in, I was looking at the school as a very different sort of place. But when you get in and you look around, it's a graduate school.
It is a graduate education.
There are students there. There are young people there. They're not studying 24 hours a day. They need a little bit of recreation time and opportunity to pursue interests. So while it's a small piece of what we do, it's a very important piece. And our office is actually kind of a clubhouse for the students. It's probably a little too loose a term, but we have a nice living room area. We have a couple TVs. When I left today, there was about a half dozen students sitting there watching the World Cup soccer game, eating
England
their lunch.
And Croatia, yeah, that's right.
So that's unexpected for me, but a really nice element of this whole experience is to have that interaction with the students each day and provide a place where they can come, take a breath, relax, have their lunch, do a little homework maybe, or sit and socialize with other students.
And of course, another thing that the foundation does, and I have to mention, is sponsor the YourTown television segment, which brings both faculty and students the ability to talk about their research as well as their experiences here in the school area.
And I would just say that's an important part, I think, of the whole program going forward, because we want the greater community to have a better sense of what NPS does. And I'm, a newcomer there, but already I can see the important nature of so much of the work that's done and the education of these men and women who are going to go on and be leaders in the country in so many ways. And so we need to get out in the community further. We need to share what the student experience is like there, share some of the research that we're able to that's going on there, and really have the community, I think, be even prouder of what happens on the NPS campus. So we appreciate you having us over today and what you do here in the program.
Well, let's talk a little bit about a harder thing. And that is this: you have this nexus or this intersection of both military and academia at NPS. So, how's your experience been different in the foundation, or what challenges are there that didn't exist at Santa Catalina or Pebble Beach?
Well, it's clearly a very different place than those two. One thing I'll say right off is it has a very wonderful and common thread, which is the people associated with, whether it's Pebble Beach, Santa Catalina, or NPS, are wonderful people. They're warm, welcoming people. They're very committed to what they do. They believe strongly in what they do. The difference in what I'm doing now, I think, really lies more with what the school is and what the school does. My role there is to assist with fundraising, helping develop a strong alumni program, which we're really excited about getting going with the school, and working on creating just a great support mechanism for the school. We've had wonderful cooperation from President Rout and members of his team in developing greater connections and ease, I think, in which we're allowed to raise funds and provide those funds in support of the school. And that's probably one of the differences, just having to work through the policies and procedures of a governmental entity to allow us to raise money and provide the money. And there's a clear system to do that, and it works. It's just not as simple as raising money for Santa Catalina. The money goes right in our bank account, and we can help support student scholarship or facility growth or whatever it might be. There's a different process with this, and certainly a different level of education. I think one of the things I've taken very clearly away from this first month is NPS is a one of one. There's no other graduate school in the country like it for a number of reasons. And to me, that's a very exciting prospect to raise money for, to work for the betterment of the school and the students.
Well, we have a couple more minutes. Let's talk a little bit about those fundraising efforts. First, I know that you get a chance to talk a lot of industry partners, potentially to take a look at collaborative opportunities. But then also, foundation members have an opportunity to participate on some things on campus. So could you address both of those?
Well, I think the largest window of opportunity we have going forward is on the corporate side, whether it's working towards a cybersecurity program that we're looking at developing in conjunction with the school and others, or some existing programs, the facility that's being looked at, as I mentioned earlier. There's some wonderful opportunity for corporate involvement, and not just traditional corporate entities you'd think of with a military institution, defense contractors and such, but could be technology companies, financial management companies. Really across the board, everybody cares about cybersecurity, so there's a connection there. And so it's just a breadth of corporate opportunities. Individually, there's great opportunities there as well. As I said, we do everything from seed funding to seedling funding and looking to grow that. And we're doing that in a combination of ways. But one of the things that I think is probably not well known around the community is there are opportunities for the public to come listen to certain speakers that come to the campus to speak to the students, whether it's through the school's official speaking program that the Secretary of Navy is involved with, or whether it's foundation programs. We have a leadership speaker series that's coming up with some wonderful speakers that'll be joining us on campus. Ross Perot Jr., we're working on a couple other folks that are industry leaders to come and talk to the students about leadership. And those are opportunities for the public if they'd like to contact our office, and they can go on our website and get the contact information to come and sit in and listen to some of those speakers.
Well, let's call up that website so that we can see it on television and people can actually visit there. It's NPS Foundation, is it .org or
.org?
.org. So take a look at that and please visit the site and see all the activities that's listed there. That's great.
And they'll get a great sense of the foundation on the site. It's very easy to navigate and has a lot of information that just gives you a sense about the foundation and also about the school. And of course, the school has its own website.
Oh, no, absolutely, because the links are there. So we invite you to actually visit that site. We want to thank you very much, Mr. Richard Patterson, for joining us today, the Chief Executive Officer of the NPS Foundation, the sponsor of this segment that brings you interesting stories of faculty and students at the Naval Postgraduate School, both their lives and their research. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jeff.